Hey, welcome back everyone to Todd's podcast. Our guest today is Steve Giordano, who is the president and the CEO of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Polk County. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Todd.
I look forward to a great podcast today. We're going to talk a little bit about the evolution of the Boys and Girls Club, what we do here in Polk County. But just because we're talking about Polk County, the Boys and Girls Clubs exist all over. So, I don't want people thinking, hey, this is just something here. And we'll talk, bigger picture a little bit as we go along. But Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself, when you came here, where you came from, what's your background?
So, Todd, I've had the good fortune of being in the furniture business in basically every position. When I was going to college back in the Jurassic period, I was a janitor for a billion-dollar furniture company. And nighttime janitor. I wasn't quite good enough to,
You're working your way up the ladder?
By God, I was going to be the daytime janitor and got there. Anyway, in 17 years, I left as a vice president, but the fortune was I was able to hold every single position in that company. Now, if you've run every single position in a big company, it gives you a lot of experience at solving problems. So my next job was a president somewhere where I solved problems. It was a company that was losing money, and we were able to turn around. We put a team together, and since then, I have just gone from one job to another. Never had to look for a job, never been fired, not counting tomorrow. So, good so far. But the point is, we've lived in Florida for about 25 years now.
Okay.
And I've been promising my wife I'm going to do one of these turnarounds in Florida someday. Because I've been in LA and Atlanta and Richmond and upstate New York and all these places. And I said, I don't choose them. It's just, IBM doesn't call me. They're doing fine. Well, somebody called me from the Boys and Girls Club and said, we've got this merger that it's a shotgun wedding. Neither side wants to marry the other.
I remember.
But somehow we got to get them together and make them profitable. And that was in 2019. And that's when I started.
I remember that time. And there was a divide here. And, a lot of people competing for scant resources, as what happens in a large community, large county like we're in. Where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York. And like most people in Brooklyn at the time, this was the late 50s, Eisenhower era Brooklyn.
Okay.
We moved out to the island, which is where I was raised, went to New York Tech, which is in Old Westbury, New York. So I'm a New Yorker.
So we're starting to redneck you up a little bit and get some of that New York accent out of your mouth a little bit.
I can't tell if I have it or not. You'll be the better judge of that.
There are those with it much worse than you have. You've kind of moderated.
Or much better.
Much better. I've told the story. My mom is from Georgia, and her whole family was. And when we would go up as kids to her family reunion, it would take 2 or 3 weeks for us to break her over Georgia accent and to start talking like Florida again. Let's talk about the needs and the necessities of having robust Boys and Girls Clubs in these communities across the U.S. and Florida. Do y'all have a global reach, or are the Boys and Girls Clubs just a U.S. Organization?
No, so there are over 5,000 organizations
Really?
right now in all 50 states, and many in Europe and Asia, as long as there's military bases there. Where we have military bases, we tend to have a Boys and Girls Club there. So we are global. And it was started in 1860 by 3 women in Connecticut who wanted to keep kids off the street. And at that time, the vice was smoking. They were smoking on the street and getting into trouble. And, today it's slightly different because sometimes we want to get kids out and exercise. A lot of them don't do what you and I did when we grew up. And then a lot of them who are on the street or in bad streets. And if it was a good idea then, it's a better idea now.
Right. What tell us a little bit about what the boy. I was not a boys club kid. We had a neighborhood full of boys. We had our own boys club in our neighborhood, and it typically evolved in our backyard. But tell us kind of what the clubs do for the kids these days and what they offer, because there's some people that just have never really been around the Boys and Girls Clubs.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the outcomes because if we are lucky like you were and others who had a network of people that took good care of you, were great mentors, and there were kids around, that's terrific. You don't need a Boys and Girls Club. Everybody doesn't have that experience. Right. Which is why when we show up, and we show up, we now have 10 locations, about to have 11, when we show up...
Just in Polk County.
Just in Polk County. Crime drops by 33% in the area. Teen pregnancy drops by 40%. High school graduation improves by 30%. All because we are there putting programs together. Now, what are those programs? Well, you come off the bus, you get in, you'll say hello to your unit director, and then we're off into groups. One group's going to do triple play. They're going to go outside and play and run around and get rid of some of that energy. Some kids are going to do power hour. And power hour is their homework, and they're going to make sure that they do their homework. If they don't have homework or claim they don't have homework, they're going to work on their worst subject with real tutors from the schools that they just went to.
Okay.
And there's money matters, and there's workforce readiness, and all sorts of things, including a hot meal. Since the merger, we've served over 1.5 million hot meals to kids who need them.
That on the website.
Yeah.
Was a hot meal always a program that you had? Was it something that came up as a need that y'all identified and said, okay, we got kids that are coming here hungry. What are we going to do about that?
Yeah, we always had a food program, and most boys and girls clubs that have food programs are shelf-stable meals, and they're okay, especially if kids aren't eating. But we got a central kitchen in Bartow.
Okay.
And it was the first club we opened. It's the Joe L. Saunders Club in Bartow. And it came with, or we asked for, the central kitchen that came with. And now all of a sudden we were able to hub and spoke our way into a big food program, which we never were able to do before. So our food guy gets there at 7 a.m. He is making hot, delicious meals, asks the kids what they like. He's going to get them, what their favorite meals. We're going to deliver them to about 6 of our locations. 4 of them are going to make their own. And now we're able to purchase in bulk. We get reimbursed by the Department of Agriculture, and whatever we're able to economize with, the yield between what they give us and what we spend,
right,
we can spend on supplies and programs. So it's a win-win.
Has this meal program, has it kind of taken the place because some of the kids were going home after school? I mean, after being with you guys and not having anything for dinner, is that kind of what y'all were doing as we're taking care of the dinner time?
Yes, Todd, particularly in the summer when they don't have the school meal, okay, because most of these kids do qualify for a free lunch. But in many cases, they aren't getting a meal at home. They're not getting school time. So one mom summed it up like this to me one time. She said, when we first moved here, I'm a single mom. We had a very chaotic life. My daughter was angry and frustrated, and I'd get her home from school. I have to wrestle her into doing her homework. We'd scoff McDonald's down or something if we had the chance to, and we both go to bed mad at each other. Now I pick up my daughter. She's had a nutritious meal. The homework is done. She's talking about how excited she is. You've given me a relationship with my daughter. That's what the Boys and Girls Clubs does.
And now she can be a family at night, be a mom instead of having to try and herd cats. Do you find that if you've got one kid from a family that's participating in your program, whether boys or girls side, that all the kids do, or is it, hey, one kid does it, the other say, hey, I'm too cool for that, or they're just too old, or they've got too many responsibilities and they don't have the ability to participate?
So I'm impressed at how well you know the family dynamic, because there is always one kid that's too cool for it until he hears the other kid come home talking about all the fun they had. Because these kids are not sitting around just doing work. They're playing basketball, they're running around, they're playing quiz games, and so it's fun, and we do tend to get multiple family members.
Tell us a little bit about the restructuring. You mentioned that briefly as we started off with the competition, let's use that word, between the East and West Side and the different clubs and the restructuring and how all that happened. I know it wasn't a simple thing to do. There was a lot of emotion, a lot of ownership of, hey, we've got our club, we don't need another club or whatever. Tell us how you kind of went through that, because there may be other people who are involved in clubs around that are not just Polk County that are saying, hey, my clubs or my county's dealing with the same thing. What would they have to look forward to?
I think this is a wonderful lesson. I'm a business person. It's a great business lesson. It's a great Boys and Girls Club lesson. It's a great culture lesson when you're trying to blend communities that don't always blend naturally. And in this case, we had Lakeland and Mulberry, who were overly dependent on grants, but not doing great financially. And then we had Citrus Center, which was Lake Wales and Haines City and Winter Haven. That was, let's just call it, in the zone of insolvency. Okay, right. They were losing more than $250,000 every year.
Yikes!
And so we had, and ironically, both of these two organizations, neither of which was healthy, both were against merging because they thought, well, you're going to get all the love and all the resources. You're going to take resources from Winter Haven and put it into Lakeland. Now, just for a little drama, and I won't spend but a minute on this. I get the job, and we have no money to make payroll, which is in 12 days. And the board member...
Did you know that when you took the job?
No, I didn't. I didn't see any financials from this at all.
I think it's called a bait and switch.
That's true. They gave me financials from some club in Colorado for me to figure it out, and I did, but I never saw these. So the board representative who told me this said, I don't know what you're going to do. He says, I'm sorry we're putting you in this position. And he says, I don't know how you'll sleep at night. And I said, that's fine. I sleep like a baby. He said, well, that's great. I said, no, I mean, I wake up every hour and cry. It's just, how do we? And I did. I'd look at the bank statement every day. First thing I do, I just say, what do we got? Did we get any donations yesterday? And so slowly, we built bridges, started with some grants, and every grant we could apply for, we just did. And so we started getting some bridge money, and then we just developed an RD program. And so now fast forward.
What do you mean RD?
Resource development.
Okay.
Which is, where you go and you say, listen, these services that we provide that I talked about, these are free to the kid.
Right.
Now, they're not free. They cost money. Somebody's got to pay. Well, the community pays. And the community, Polk County, is ridiculously generous.
Yep, they are.
And so as a result of all those fine people, we're able to do this. But somebody's got to go out there and ask. Well, that was my job. Got to go out there and ask. Got to go out there and get some funds. And today, because we have a phenomenal board and phenomenal staff.
And community.
Yes. Most important. Yeah. We are sitting in a place where, we have a balance sheet to die for. We have no debt. We have an endowment that is going to be growing. We now have 10 locations, about to have 11, one of which is being built, another one is being renovated. We raised $10 million to build those two projects. So thank goodness, and the community, we're in a lot better shape today. And the ironic thing is, it lifted all boats.
Right.
Winter Haven didn't get better at the cost of Lakeland. It lifted all boats.
Right. I think people don't understand how important it is to be close to the community you're serving. It would be hard for a Frostproof kid to come to Lakeland or Haines City. I mean, you kind of need these clubs in the community they're serving, one, for ease of the kids getting there and getting home. And the less time they're on the bus getting there, the more time they're hanging out with their buds, having a good meal, doing their homework and everything. So I think the expansion plans have been phenomenal. Do you have an identified recurring source of income? And this is not something, I'm kind of hitting you this out of left field because it just came to me as you were talking. I mean, there's, I don't know there's a dedicated source out there other than, money we make off of grants, or maybe, people have put us in an endowment or something, but.
Yeah, I think that.
So every year you start from zero almost.
Not quite.
Not quite.
There tends to be some overlap. There tends to be some gap. If you did your grant writing correctly, there's going to be some overlap where one's ending and another one can begin. But it is very much like selling in the industry I came from. You're only as good as your last sale, and you're always selling. The good news is we have a phenomenal product to sell.
Right.
I'm selling a better hope trajectory for these kids who can't get there without us,
right.
And I've got outcomes that work. So, I've got a good elevator pitch because it's a good product. We're a good organization that is solid financially, because you don't want to give to one that's not going to be around in a while. And I have those outcomes. So we don't have a recurring source that we can always count on, because we got to go out there and raise it again.
I think people also don't understand, you touched on it briefly, but the ability for the Boys and Girls Clubs to deliver these programs far exceeds the government's ability to do it. The outcomes are greater. They're probably done more cost effective. You've got a board of directors who's flexible, who can say, hey, this isn't working. We're not married to it. Let's try it a different way. I think that's one of the phenomenal things about your organization, and, just knowing some of your board members and how dedicated they are. Todd's podcast is sponsored in part by Saunders Real Estate, your trusted partner in land and commercial real estate since 1996. With over 125 expert advisors located throughout the Southeast United States, the full-service brokerage specializes in a wide range of property types from farms and ranches to commercial buildings and development land. If you're looking to build your legacy with a confident investment, please visit SaundersRealEstate.com or call 877-518-5263 to connect with an advisor today. How about capital investments? You say you got $10 million worth of buildings, you've got no debt. I mean, that's phenomenal compared to where it was in, 19 you said when you came?
Yes.
You know, hopefully you're sleeping like a baby now and you're not just waking up crying. But what are some of those investments that you've been able to make?
So, I want to start with, I believe in expansion without growing fixed costs. It's a good practice to live by. So our very first expansion was in a public space. It was in a school. So if I've got a school, if I've got a building that's not being used, you're in the business, you know this, it's much easier to take over an existing building, particularly if it's not being used. So we expanded 30%, in 3 years. Through not raising our fixed costs, our variable costs went up in people, but we were able to just go into these spots. And then we said, well, why would we ever buy a place? I'm not into buying a place, but I own some property. And some of the locations were really decaying. Our kids were in buses without air conditioning.
Right.
They were in facilities without air conditioning and, broken windows and bad basketball courts. And it was just, I felt it didn't send the right message. And we said, let's launch a capital campaign, see if we can't run money. I never launched a capital campaign. I don't know anything about it, but you must be able to figure out how to do it. And we did. And now this George Jenkins unit over here in Winter Haven, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It's got a brand new gym. It's air conditioned throughout. So all our buses are air conditioned. Our James J. Musso, which is our club, which is our oldest club, is air conditioned with a new gym.
Right.
Our Mulberry Workforce Readiness Center will open at the end of this year, and that's air conditioned. There'll be a working barber shop in there where kids will actually serve the public, learn how to be barbers, because not everybody goes to college.
Right.
So we want some workforce readiness stuff going on there. In Winter Haven, there'll be a recording studio, so they'll be able to podcast in that unit right there.
Do you do different programs at different locations? I'm kind of hearing that as, hey, maybe kind of like, what are the schools that do that? But,
charter schools?
Charter schools. And, hey, this one's going to concentrate on pharmacy. If you want to be a pharmacist, you're going to have to drive or bus to this community, wherever it is. But if you think you want to be a pharmacist, this is where you go. I'm the most familiar with the Winter Haven Club because I drive by there probably once a week, once every other week. And you're totally gutted the building, renovating it. I mean, just the work that's going to be there will be phenomenal. And I'm assuming you've been doing that, it sounds like, with a bunch of the other clubs, bringing them into modern day. They're all going to be wired with, internet so the kids can do their homework after school. Do you supply computers, or do you have an IT room where they just come and use desktops, or?
Both. Now, oftentimes the schools are given them laptops to use, okay, and we'll use those. But we have computers. All our grants are able to provide computers. We have some desktops. We have MobiMax and other digital programs that we use for them. And you're right. All our locations now, they're all air conditioned. They're all digitally fast, and they are all protected against all the bad sites. And just we've done it right. But the point is, we're not going to expand anymore by growing buildings. We've spent all the money we needed to spend. We're proud of what we got. Now we're going to go back to expanding without growing our fixed cost again into public places. And we have lots of opportunity because we have to get to 10,000 kids. We're at about 5,000 now we serve per year.
So you can scale up, double your size with the infrastructure that you've got already.
I wouldn't quite go double. I would say, it is going to be double in Winter Haven, the one that you're referring to, and of course it was zero, so it'll be 200 more in Mulberry.
Right.
But most of our clubs can still have organic growth of 25 to 30%. We've grown double digits in ADA, which is average daily attendance, every year since 2019.
Do each of your buildings have a kitchen to serve, not necessarily a prep kitchen, or not necessarily a hot kitchen, but one where they could prep the meals and then serve them, or
No.
some of them just come in ready to eat?
That's what we do in most of them.
Okay.
Most of our buildings do not have that, but the newer ones do.
Staffing needs. In looking at your website, you've got a lot of staff. And when I say that, I'm sure you're going to say, yes, but I could always use more. You probably have as much as you can afford, but you would like to have more, obviously for more kids. Are you finding it easy to find staff around here? What are your barriers for finding people and finding young folks either to volunteer or actually get a paycheck working for y'all?
So first of all, I'm emotionally connected to the phenomenal staff we have. Mm-hmm. These are people, Todd, who could go elsewhere and make more money tomorrow. Right. And they're with us. And this will sound like I'm digressing, but I promise I'll keep it tight. And people say to me, hey, you've run for-profit businesses most of your career, and now you're here at this nonprofit business. What's the difference? And as a practical matter, there really isn't a lot of difference. It's, you're a business person. It's balancing resources, whether they be capital resources, human resources. Right. It's all about people. There is one difference. And you talked about some of our board members that and I'm thinking of one in particular. There's an absence of hypocrisy. I have not encountered it once. Not in the board, not in the staff, not in any of the kids who are coming there. Everybody's doing it for the right reasons. Right. The donors are. So I encountered hypocrisy a fair amount in the other world, but in this world I don't get it. Now the point of that is because I have the staff who's there for the right reason, their why is intact. They are there so kids will have their best future. It takes a special type of person to work in an organization. We call it bleeding blue. Blue is our Boys and Girls Club color. It's good to be a business person. I'm a business person. I came for the turnaround, but I stay for the kids.
Right.
So we do need people, but we've been very fortunate. We have a great work environment. We have a very good, respectful culture, and that's why it's not as difficult for us. It's still difficult,
right,
as it is in other places.
Yeah. From the folks I know that are involved, there's no ego either. It is all about the kids. And again, I didn't grow up as a boys club kid. Wasn't ever really around it. I became an elected official, and they kind of brought me in to figure out what they do. And I said, hey, maybe we could do some funding. And we figured out some creative ways to do some funding that had not really been exposed to them before. And now, I'm a huge fan of it, even though I don't utilize it. But I'm a big believer in the mission and the trajectory that they're on. And I think you and your whole board have done a yeoman's job of it. And I don't mean just you. I think Boys and Girls Clubs everywhere are doing it. Of course, there are going to be some that struggle, but there are going to be others that have huge success. And, they're going to come here and say, hey, how are you doing this, Steve? How'd you get it turned around so quick?
They do ask us that. They ask us from time to time to expand. They'd like for us to acquire more clubs because not all clubs, not surprisingly, are on good financial footing. But We're very selective. We're very careful. But, you spoke earlier about not having a connection to it, although I know you've personally helped us. And when you were a county commissioner, you've helped us. But everybody has a connection to it. Because even if we think we don't, there's a study that showed that the prison planning that is done to determine how many prisons we'll have in years ahead is based somewhat off third grade test scores. So there's a correlation. It may not be linear or direct, but there's a correlation between third grade test scores and how many prisons we'll need. That is to say, when they go down, prisons go up.
Right.
So you're not going to tell me that doesn't touch you, because it's a pay me now or pay me later thing. Right. And our motto is to have all children, especially those who need us the most, to become productive, caring, responsible members of the community. When they do that, tax revenues increase. Right. It hurts. It affects everybody.
Have y'all ever done a study, survey, whatever? I know the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts about, hey, this guy or this gal, they were an Eagle Scout or they've done this, and scouting kind of runs a parallel type program. And have you ever looked at it and say, hey, this is this guy or this gal that's our governor, that's our mayor, they were a boys club kid or they were a girls club kid. Have you ever done anything like that? It seems like that could make something to brag about.
Yeah, our alumni is quite impressive.
I agree.
We have very very famous people who will come. Usher is a club kid. Colin Powell is a club kid. I could go down the list for you. There are literally a hall of fame of these club kids who go on, and they don't just go on and say I was part of the Boys and Girls Club. They say, but for the Boys and Girls Club,
Right.
I wouldn't be where I am today.
Right, and that's an easy distinction. I do think I remember Colin Powell being named as was he like the national director?
He was.
I think
You're
maybe
right.
that's where I saw
Yeah.
the tie-in with him. What do you think the future of the Boys and Girls Clubs organization is? And
Well, in Polk County, which is where we're concentrated, we have a challenge. Sheriff Grady Judd told us, when I went to see him in 2019, he said, I believe in it. I was a club kid. This thing works. We need you to grow. We need you to become financially sound. And I said, Sheriff, how many kids do we need to serve? And so he said, well, how many do you serve now? And we served about 1,000, just under 1,000. And
in all of Polk County.
In all of Polk County. And so I said, okay. I said, well, let me put it this way, Sheriff. There's 55,000 at-risk kids in Polk County. Okay? We're serving 1,000 of them. That's not critical mass. Give me a number that's critical mass. He said 10,000 a year. If you serve 10,000 kids a year, every year, now all of a sudden the community is getting a trajectory change.
And you're moving Grady's numbers on the law enforcement side.
That's right. Then that's why he's a fan. And so we just put it in our mind. So, well, that's as good a strategic plan as we've ever had. So let's go for 10,000 kids. We didn't know how to get there. Like most turnarounds I've been involved in, if people would ask me when I get this job or when I'm interviewed for these jobs, Steve, can you do it? I always say absolutely yes. If they follow it up, which they almost never do, with how will you do that? Right. I have no more idea than a goat at that time how to do it, and probably still don't. But in business, as you know, you try stuff and you measure and watch it and say that didn't work so well, so let's not do that. And hey, that worked. Measure that. Do more. Whatever that was, do it. And that's how we do it. So the future is, I've signed on for another 5 years. We completed our first 5 years and got halfway there. 5,000 kids now. The board has been gracious enough. The board has only 2 jobs: raise money and hire and fire me every 30 days. So, my contract, and I don't have one, is every 30 days. And I just write a summary and say, you want me to continue on? They're like, yeah, continue on, whatever. But that's their job. And so they've told me they would like to see me do this for another 5 years or so. And I've agreed to do that. And we're going to get to 10,000 kids, hopefully in, maybe 1 or 2 more locations. Again, I want to keep those fixed costs down, but that's where we're going to go. And we're going to change the makeup a little bit. Our revenue streams are still a little out of balance. I'm still too heavily dependent on grants. It used to be 80% of our revenue, 75%, 80. Now it's closer to 60%. Love for it to be like 50%. It'll always be part of it. There'll always be money out there, and we want to claim it for our kids because they deserve it. But let's be less dependent on that. Let's be more dependent on private donations and corporate donations. So 5 years from now, if I'm able to take my grandchildren past there and say, your grandpa had something to do with that building, and there's a $5 million endowment, and they're not going to have to watch the bank accounts like I had to do 10 years ago, it'll be the best work I've ever done.
Hello, this is Otis Birdsong, and I want to thank you for listening to Todd's podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe to Todd's podcast on your favorite podcast app to get notified every time Todd releases a new episode. Trust me, you won't be disappointed.
What metric do you look at when you said you might want to increase the club number by 2, just here in Polk County or anywhere? Is there a minimum population? Is there a minimum childhood population of 3rd grade through 12th grade that you look at and say, okay, once they have this many people, typically it should be able to support a club with a physical plant or a campus, and with the right volunteers and the right staff? Obviously all that has to come along, but is there some way to kind of look out and say, hey, I think we've got enough population in this part of the county or this district of this coordinates of Florida that we could look at?
Sadly, it's the other way around.
Really?
There's a tremendous number of children who need our services. So I have a waiting list at every one of my clubs. And there are communities that would love to have us that don't have us yet. Some of them have food deserts. I'm thinking of Davenport, there are sections there that we're not in yet. There's Frostproof, but so there's more kids that need me than I can serve. So my focus is on the reverse, which is the cost of customer acquisition. What does it cost me to acquire those customers? Because I've got to raise, it's my rule, but I don't go anywhere unless I raise 2 years of capital. Because I'm not going to open up and close down. When we open up, we stay. We're like the Marines. We stay.
Right.
So we got to make sure there's enough money there. And frequently there's not, which is why it's great that we're Polk County, because we go into, I don't want to say the community, but let's say
smaller community.
Some smaller community that doesn't have a lot of money, and we literally have to raise the money from elsewhere, and that's the benefit, lifts all boats. And so we do that, and we'll probably do it again, but there's plenty of kids that need us that we cannot afford to get to this.
Well, how does a kid get involved with a club that may not have ever heard of it? Then they say, well, I'd like to come, but I don't have any money. I can't, I can't give you even $10. I think you said earlier that kids don't pay anything.
Nothing. There's no charge for any of our clubs. All Boys and Girls Clubs aren't like that. Some of them do have membership fees, but you look at.
Is it ever means tested, or you just say, hey, you either do it or you don't?
Well, let's put it this way. It's against the charter of what we're trying to do here.
Okay.
And the amount of money we would raise from a small membership fee, it's not going to make the difference. And it makes a huge difference when a child wants to go here. And usually it's not the child that wants to go here. It's single, usually, as a generalization,
right.
Single mom who's got to work. She does not have after-school care for her child. She certainly doesn't have summer school or, a summer daycare program. All of that is free, so you can drop them off in the summer at 7 a.m., and by 5, they've eaten lunch, a snack, and dinner, had exercise, gone to fun places, and now here's your kid home, and you didn't have to pay anything. So that's why there's a waiting list. And how do you get there? Well, you just go on our website, and you apply. I mean, we're taking summer applications right now, and, we're getting lots and lots of calls, and it's filling up pretty quickly.
Tell us the name of your website. I'll ask you that at the very end, but you just mentioned it. How does someone go on your website?
They go to BGC, which stands for Boys and Girls Club, Polk.org.
Okay.
And there's a Donate Now button, and there's a Register button, and I like the Donate Now button better, but
right.
You'll find them both.
So when summer school hours come around, you do open up your organization, your hours 7 to 5-ish?
Yes.
Depending on, the community, I'm assuming.
Yes.
And that keeps those kids off. Do you teach them some type of vocational training? Do you have mentors coming in, maybe a doctor, maybe a pharmacist, maybe a military person that says, hey, this is how I got my career in the military. This is how I decided I wanted to be a pharmacist. Let me, I'm happy to sit down with you, Mary or John, and let's chart out a course, and I'll stick with you and help you get through it.
We do, but not nearly enough. And it's typically
Okay.
not done in the summer. In the summer, we're pretty busy. There's field trips, and, we're taking them out and doing exciting stuff and just keeping the kids active. We got a full day. So, but, in the after school, we've had athletes and doctors and people like yourself come and say, hey, listen, this is real estate is a real business.
Sometimes it is. Some days are better than others, just like yours. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night crying like a baby. What are the impacts that you're seeing? We talked a little bit, the impacts you're seeing on these kids that are coming out, maybe some of the success stories. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's the best part of my job. It's just, we were talking about the Badcock organization earlier. Woogie Badcock used to tell me, Steve, if you're having a tough day, just show up at a club and go in there and just hang out with them, and you'll feel better. And he's never been more right. And so, but you take, for example, our Youth of the Year. We just did our Youth of the Year 3 months ago, and we selected one to send on to the state finals. This young lady, her name is Paris. She comes from a background where she is being bullied. She's got a single mom. She's got anxiety. She can't get out of. She can't go out of the house. She's scared to. She has no friends. She is failing in school.
She's an only child?
She's an only child.
Okay.
She comes to us. She gets great mentorship. The staff there love on her, pay attention to her. She now is speaking in front of crowds. Wow. She's going to college. She is our Youth of the Year from Polk County. But any one of the candidates, Mario, I'm thinking of Mario, this young man. He's 12 years old when he first gets involved in drugs, and he's addicted to drugs. He is going down a road of crime. He is being bullied at the same time. He is angry, so angry he can't even talk to anybody when he first gets to the club. He's now going to college on a full ride because of us.
Wow.
Yeah.
What you're describing, it sounds like they become part of the community. And if they had never walked through the door, they would just kind of be drifting through life rather than being part of a community. And now they're going to be productive folks, hopefully in the long run, and give something back.
You know, it is. I have one more. It's I have 7 more, but we only have time for one more.
I like these stories. These are good ones.
So, I walk into a club once, and there's 2 8-year-olds mashing each other with fists, just pounding away at each other. So the unit director goes there, and she, pulls them apart. And her name is Ivory, and at the time she was a unit director over in Lakeland. And she brings, one of them wants no part of the fight. Okay, he's ready to go back. The other one's still ready to fight some more. So she brings him in the office where I'm sitting, pretending to be doing my work on a laptop, but really listening.
Right.
And she leans down to this little guy, and Todd, you had to see. I mean, his face is just great. His eyes are tearing up. He's just so mad you can barely stand it. And so she says, "Baby, what's wrong?" And he says, "I don't like him, and I hate it here." And she says, "Okay, all right." She said, "Sweetie, but what's wrong?" And he said, "I told you, I hate it here, and I hate you." And then she does something instinctively. I don't know what instinctively means, but instinctively she gets down to his level and looks him in the eye and says, "Sweetie, what's wrong?" And he says, "We got kicked out of our home last night. Now we got to go live with my aunt, and she's mean, and I'm scared." And she hugs him. Now that doesn't solve the problem. This little guy's still going to have to face some bad stuff, but you're not going to tell me that this little guy getting hugged by somebody he trusts and believes in,
right,
that doesn't make a difference in his life. And you're also not going to tell me somebody as successful as you, that you didn't have mentors in this world.
Right.
And he's got a mentor now, and he is going to now look at expanding his horizons because of what her horizons are.
Yeah.
That's what it does.
Yeah. It just refocuses him. It just, that one little brief moment of humanity took him out of the pain that he was in, and all of a sudden said, "Hey,
well said.
You're
That's
not
exactly right.
here by yourself. You've got people around you that care for you and love you," and that's pretty impressive. What types of community partnerships make the work of the Boys and Girls Clubs possible?
Todd, it's everything. I could take up all of our time just talking about whether we're talking about from the United Way of Central Florida to the Polk County School, both of whom are very supportive, and everybody in between. These are wonderful partners. Right. As you said before, we don't run without the community. These services cost a lot of money. These buildings we're building cost a lot of money, and we're not charging the customer for these things. We're charging the community. The community is smart enough to know it's a pay me now or pay me later situation, right, and they give generously. Polk County is very philanthropic, so we have wonderful partnerships with our local governments in Tallahassee, who's given us money. But the vast majority is just the everyday person, whether they give $5 a month or right, $5,000 a month. That's what keeps us going.
I've seen some real estate companies, because that's the business that I'm in, is they'll say, "Hey, for the month of January, we're going to take 5% of everybody's closing." It's voluntary, and we're going to take 5%. And this month's charity may be the wrong word, but it's the meaning. And we're going to give that to the Boys and Girls Club. And next month it'll be the dog pound or whatever. Yeah. Are there creative ways for different companies? Hey, I want to take $2 of every haircut I give, and I want to, maybe I send them $25. That's $25 that person was able to raise just by cutting someone's hair or, selling a hamburger or whatever. Are there creative ways that y'all are out promoting? Yeah. Are some of those things noticed on the website? How do you get more people involved?
Yeah, so we have a partnership with several retailers now. I'm thinking of one retailer, and again, I don't want to name all of them and leave somebody upset at me because I didn't name them. So this one retailer is having a day, a Boys and Girls Club day. Well, we show up with adorable kids on that day. And those adorable kids, and I got video of them, are going out to people and saying, "Thank you for your support. Thank you for your support." And you better believe that they're going to give money to the kids.
Dig a little bit deeper.
That's right. That's right. And so, we have those, and any business can register again on our website to do that. There are companies that have matching opportunities,
right?
And several of our big companies do that. But it's just that the best thing to do is to go on a club tour.
Yeah.
Just if I get you on a club tour, you're going to love what you see. You're going to be shocked that these kids get to have this experience for nothing, and you can have something to do with that. And I'm personally an investor in Boys and Girls Club. Okay, I give every month, and it's because I know it's working. Right. And one more thing, it does make me feel better.
Yeah. So when you say a club tour, you're talking about a tour of the campus, maybe in your community, and probably after school when the kids are there. You don't want to come in at 9 o'clock in the morning when, the nighttime janitor, is just waking up and getting the bathrooms clean. But come in the afternoon and see it full of the kids and see the energy and see the difference that it's making in their lives. That's what you're kind of referencing?
It is. When you go on a club tour, we're going to get there when the kids get there. You're going to see the kids running off the bus into the club. And, depending on the club, some club directors, and frankly, most of them, are magnificent. Right. They know every one of the 100 kids that just showed up. And, the kids are talking to them and say, "You're not going to believe what I did. I got this test score back, and I did this one." And every single one. "And Miss Maggie, are you going to be able to come to my parade this Saturday? Are you?" I mean, they are. We had this one kid who was not in our club, and she came in and knocked on the door, got the unit director, and she said, "My sister told me that I can trust you." And she said, "You can trust me." And she says, "There's an abuse situation, and I'm the victim, and I need help." And she was able to get help because of that, because she couldn't admit it to her family.
Right.
That's how much trust the kids have in these people. It's magnificent.
I would think for a club tour, you don't want people just dropping in. You kind of does it need to be organized? Go to the website and organize it. Call corporate headquarters. I think your corporate headquarters in Mulberry. Is that where your corporate headquarters is?
But anybody, if you go to our website and you go to our About page, you'll see the board members. Okay. You'll see leadership. You can reach out to any of them. Anybody can send me an email and say, "I want a club tour," and I'll personally take them on a club tour.
The website's great. I've been on there, lots of resources and pretty neat stuff. Are local governments supportive of your efforts? And I'm not saying if they're not, don't call them out.
Right.
I can do that when you're not here because I do think it's important. You've made the case of why it's important to be keeping these kids off the street, give them something productive to do for the long run benefit of themselves and for society. But you find local governments are kind of supportive and
Yeah, first, I would be remiss if I didn't match your compliment of the website to Good Intense Marketing. Stephanie Hoskins is on our board of directors. And
thank you, Stephanie.
She's done a magnificent job, and she's a vice chair and one of many valuable members on the board. Local governments do tend to help, primarily because when we go, we don't show up and say, "Do you want us?" We get a call that says, "We need a Boys and Girls Club here." And I'm thinking about a place that did that. And I say, "Great. What do we got investment-wise?" And they say, "Well, we're not really able to give much money." I said, "Well, these things run on money. So, if the local government isn't willing to give something, it doesn't have to be big. Some give quite a bit. Others give not quite as much."
Could be a building. Could be space.
Could be space in a building.
Resources.
Exactly right. So the answer is most of them do. And very few of them don't, but the very few that don't existed before we formed Polk County.
Yeah, man, perhaps it's an underutilized asset that they have. Maybe it's a bus.
You bet.
Maybe it's some other resource that y'all could use. If someone wanted to give to the Boys and Girls Club, Polk County, any of them, whether it's an individual or a business, are there options for like naming scholarships, for programs, facilities in their honor? Some people like giving anonymously, and that's fine. Love those people. Some people like having their name on a building. That's even better. Are there those opportunities in each club, or do you find the need and match it to that donor?
Yeah, so there are opportunities in every club. You know, our gym in Winter Haven is going to be named for a family that gave generously. The gym in the Muso Club in Lakeland, also same thing. Somebody gave generously, and there are all sorts of naming opportunities. Even classrooms can be named for you. So there's, and we love that because we just are so. We have one donor who is an annual donor, and he runs an electric business, and every time he gets a new account, he gives us more business. And we want him to flourish. We want when good people do good, we just love it. So lots of opportunities, naming and otherwise. And the other thing is, as you said, Todd, some people want to do it anonymously. Some people, I'm learning, there are people who really don't want the recognition. But everybody wants to be thanked.
Absolutely.
And we're great at that. We're not good. We're great at that because we recognize that you have a choice. These are hard-earned dollars. You're giving them to our kids. That is a confidence booster for us. We take it. We don't take it lightly.
I heard someone say, "I'll name a rock after you if you'll write me a check." We'll just get out a marker and put your name on a rock if necessary. What are some of the immediate needs of the clubs that you're seeing right now?
So even with all we've raised for Winter Haven and Mulberry, there's still the FF&E, the furniture, fixtures, and equipment that we still have to provide. We're going to need a lot of stuff, and so those dollars go there. We're at the point now where people say, I don't want to invest in infrastructure. I want to invest in the kids. Well, the kids are the program. Every dollar. You can't say, well, this dollar is going to go to the bus that picks them up and brings them here. Otherwise, but no, I don't like bus, but I like children. Well, if you love children, give to the bus. But the good news is that as we grow, we have, as in businesses usually get, an economy of scale so that we don't need another me. So, we tend to leverage the fixed expenses and a lot more, 80 cents of every dollar goes to the kids in the program. So regardless of how they give, the kids are getting it.
Hey everybody, this is your host Todd Dantzler. As most of you know, I'm a partner with Saunders Real Estate and have been a very active and working broker for over 42 years. I have fostered strong relationships throughout the state of Florida, working on properties ranging from agriculture and development land to multifamily, commercial, and industrial projects. If you have any real estate needs at all, please give me a call. I'd love to help. My direct line is 863-877-2846. Thank you. You're reopening the George Jenkins Memorial Unit in Winter Haven very soon. Next month, maybe the month after. It's coming up. I can't remember the exact date.
Grand opening on May 22nd.
May 22nd. What's special about that location, and what improvements is the community are they going to be able to expect when they open up, and what are they going to be able to see?
The biggest thing you'll be able to see is that we will increase the number of kids. We'll have room for 400 kids there.
How many have you been running there?
Well, we have 150 was our average daily attendance last time. Been up as high as 200 in the summer, but 400 is what we're going to be able to. And and I'd love to get you on a club tour, and not just so I could wrangle you for money, but so that you could see the back patio, which is being named for a very special person, and we're going to unveil it on the day of the opening. So I'm not going to say who that special person is.
Is it Eli?
It is Eli. How did you? No, it's not really Eli. But
it is. We're paying him way too much money.
So this back patio is, overlooking Lake Cannon, beautiful Lake Cannon. And, these kids are going to be sitting under a covered setting with brand new picnic tables and giant fans, keeping them nice and cool, getting served hot meals, looking out at that with a playground over here and a dock that's being donated for us where they can fish off the dock. I mean, so the experience, yes, we're going to serve more kids, but the experience is going to be so much higher. They're going to go into an air-conditioned gym. Kerry Wilson will tell you, he remembers playing in that gym when it was so cold he could see his breath, and so hot that you couldn't see, and there'd be like a fog in there.
Now he can see his breath because he's so old and he's just wheezing.
No, he is not either. I can't have you talking about Kerry Wilson that way. And I know you love him too.
Absolutely. You're a high energy guy. What do you do to keep your energy up? How do you stay positive and upbeat? I mean, the challenge had to be there when you first came here and said, what do you mean I don't have enough for payroll this week? Sleeping better, that's good.
I am. If you're a turnaround executive, as I've been for the last 40 years, you thrive on this.
Right.
You say you have a fear of failure, and you say, I'm so scared to fail that I just got to keep running and I just got to keep going. That combined with just gratitude. Just, I mean, I am so grateful for this board of directors, for this community, for my workers to be doing what they're doing and creating hundreds of stories. I told you a smattering, a couple, that it is just humbling to be in here. I am so grateful. Every day I wake up and say, thank God I'm here. Thank God I'm doing this job, and please do a good job. And that combined with my fear of failure, I think keeps my energy up. It ain't caffeine. I don't do caffeine.
And folks, you're not hearing a hyped up version of Steve. This is how he is every time I've been around him, whether we're having a quiet lunch, to playing out some things or talk strategy or just visit and catch up. What you're seeing is that energy that you bring every day to this job, and I think that's phenomenal. If a genie washed up in a bottle on the lake and said, you got one wish, anything you want, what would that dream that you could have for the Boys and Girls Club? What would that, if you said you get one big thing, what do you want, Steve, for the clubs?
I want security. I want there to be an endowment there that, there are Boys and Girls Clubs that are really well run, have been run for many years. The Mackenzie Scott, the wife of the Amazon founder,
Right.
Jeff Bezos, gave, $30 million to one club. We don't quite need that, although if you had it, it would be great. But some amount of money in an endowment that says that after I'm gone, and there's no more turnarounds. You don't need another Steve taking
Right.
over from me. You just need somebody.
You need an operator.
You need an operator. Exactly right. And that's my dream, to have it be in such great condition, whether it's and we will add to the endowment, but if somebody, was able to help us like that, and that would secure the future of this organization, because the input gets that output. It works. We know it works as long as it keeps going.
So you have an existing endowment now.
We do.
So if someone wanted to give money, there's already a fund set up to receive that check. There's
There is.
nothing special they have to do. It's like,
Nope.
Steve, who do I make the check out to? Who do I give my credit card to? And they're off to the races.
Yeah, so I run this like a business. That's
Right.
because that's all I know how to do. So we're a nonprofit, so we're not allowed to have profit. But change in net assets is the leftover from what you used for expenses and what you took in. And every year we have a change in net assets, and that money goes into the endowment. So just giving to us ensures that if we're good stewards of your money, which I attempt to be, there's going to be some left over to put into the endowment, because that's where it goes.
The last question, or if there's anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't, please do. We've got a few more minutes, so if I've forgotten to ask you something, or say, oh, I really wanted to talk about this or that, Todd, let me know. But if someone wants to get in touch, they go to the website. Is that the best way to get y'all's contact information and set up appointments for the tours after school? Is that really the best way? And the name of the website again is?
bgcpolk.org.
So if listeners really want to get involved, and maybe they say, I don't have the ability to write a check, but I got time, I've got energy, I've got a background in this skill or this business or whatever, I've got talent that I can do. How would they go about exposing y'all to what they have? And then you could slot them in, whether, hey, I can teach kids to read very well, I can teach them how to speak another language, or whatever programs y'all are doing. How would they tell you about that?
At the same website, there's also a place for volunteers.
Okay.
And all our board members are volunteers. So that's and we have a list of people who would like to be on the board. So we don't have a big need there. We have a solid board, and we're good there. But you can volunteer to help at a golf outing. We have some people from a bank coming over. They're going to help us paint one of our clubs. And so there's all sorts of opportunity, including, as you said, we'd love to have you come and speak to the kids and talk about what the future, or some of your military friends talk about what a career there could look like for them, because a lot of these kids believe they're going to the NBA, and that's a lottery ticket. So that's not happening for everybody.
So if a company wanted to say, I want to adopt this club in Mulberry or Haines City or wherever, I want to put some resources here, they could say, what do you need? And say, hey, we need this building painted, or we need this, and they could show up with 20 or 30 employees coordinating through you, obviously, and say, yeah, we'll supply the paint, we'll supply the workers, we'll even bring the Cokes and the, in the water, and we're going to give you a good smelling, freshly painted building when we're all done. So there's all kinds of ways that people can support you.
Yeah, there you bring up a good point, and I try not to get into individual because I'm not going to mention every board member, and I could because they're all magnificent. But I did mention a couple. I'll mention another one who adopted our Showy Club. His name is Mitch, and his wife is Peggy. They're the Weinsteins, and they said they went to a meeting after a club tour, and they said, "What do you guys need?" Now they were living in a little mobile home there, this club, and serving 50 kids because that's all we could fit in a school property over here, Crystal Lake Elementary, and they said, well, we need a road, to here because it's just dirt, and we need, more room, and we need a playground, and we need all this stuff. Well, if you drive by today, Crystal Lake Elementary, and visit the Weinstein Family Club, because we've renamed it,
right,
you will see a brand new mobile unit and the old one painted, air conditioning in both, AstroTurf playground, a paved road all the way down that Lee Saunders, another board member,
right,
put in for us, and a beautiful fence and the sheriff's playground that they donated to. And this is a beautiful facility, whether it was done just because he and his wife adopted this club. And once you get there and you adopt a club, like Lee has adopted one for his father,
right,
he shows up there with pizza parties. He brings his family there. Once you do it, you won't get away from it.
Yeah. I think the generosity of our community, and I think the generosity of people in general, is phenomenal. I think what makes it really unique for donating to your Boys and Girls Club locally is you get to go by and see where your investment's going.
That's right.
You're not sending a check to Tallahassee or DC and hopefully that it gets down. You can go and say, hey, this bathroom, needs a new coat of paint. I'll come in and paint it with my kids. Or I need a new road dragging us into here. The bus is getting beat up coming in. So I think if the community would just understand what y'all's needs are. And a big part of that is the community has to ask, what do you need, Steve? What do your clubs need? And you've got a list of what you can tell them. So I've enjoyed my involvement in the periphery where I've been with the Boys and Girls Club. I think you're a phenomenal organization. I think what you do is incredible. I would encourage people to write you a check. I would encourage people to come by for a tour after school, and coordinate through you guys and become more aware of what's going on with the Boys and Girls Clubs, because it is phenomenal.
And you're being humble because, since I've been here, you've been a resource. I can call you up with business questions. You need people in a community to not just give as you've given, but also somebody, we've got real problems. Everybody who runs a business has got problems, and none of us have all the answers. So you get smart people, like a Todd Dantzler, and if you don't call them and ask them their opinion about
right,
things, man, are you missing an opportunity? And I feel that way about the people on the board, and so grateful for a community that is always there for us doing these things. Plus, you've introduced us to people who are now annual donors. So it's just, you've given tremendously, and we're grateful to you as well.
Thank you. Well, folks, that wrap up today's broadcast with Steve Giordano, the president and CEO of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Polk County. And thank you for bringing your energy, your talents, and your perspective to us, and for what you do for the boys and girls here in Polk County, and the leadership that you're showing them, because it does make a difference. And I hope that you enjoyed today's podcast. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd.
Hey, everybody. I want to thank you for listening to Todd's podcast. This has been your host, Todd Dantzler. If you enjoyed this episode today, I hope you'll join us next time when we start talking with Jim Rabe from Smoking Jim's Barbecue on Havendale Boulevard between Winter Haven and Auburndale. We talk a little bit of baseball stuff. We talk a lot of barbecue, why he got into it, how he got into it. Almost got a secret or two out of him, but about how he runs his restaurant also, and what he's doing, and some childhood stories, and how he's bragged about striking out my two brothers and I. So we had a good time, and hope you'll join us for the episode with Smoking Jim, Jimmy Rabe. As always, don't forget to rate, review, follow, and subscribe to Todd's podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you have any questions for me or any suggestions for future guests, please call or text our number at 863-288-0944 or visit todddantzler.com. Again, that's 863-288-0944. 0944 or visit my website, TODDANTZLER.com. I look forward to hearing your questions and feedback, and please take care.